from the second largest city in the United States to a forest. So we have a lot to learn about our new environment. It quickly became evident that something is killing our trees. So we reached out to a professional and asked for help. In this episode, we'll share with you what we learned from a professional forester from the Idaho Department of Lands, including the answers to two pressing questions. What is killing our trees, and what can we do to save them? We are Hidden Creek Family Ranch, a 3-generational family teaming up to build our homestead from scratch in North Idaho. Death is ironically one of the most important stages of life in a forest. When living organisms, such as trees or animals, die, their organic matter decays and returns to the soil, enriching it with key nutrients essential to new growth and life in a forest. This naturally occurring cycle of life isn't something we want to interfere with. But when we discovered over 20 dead trees on our land, all of the same species, that were alive and thriving the previous year, we were immediately concerned. After conducting some research independently and forming our own conclusions, we called upon a professional to gain a more holistic view of our forest's health. Ed immediately confirmed our suspicions. Our forest was experiencing an outbreak of bark beetles. Bark beetles are a major pest of conifer forests in North America. They're about the size of a grain of rice or smaller, and they attack trees by burrowing under the bark and creating these pathways called galleries. They lay their eggs here, and when the eggs hatch, the larvae feed on the living tissue of the tree below the bark. These galleries that they create also cut off the vascular tissue of the tree. So if enough larvae are present, the damage they cause leads to the death of the tree, usually within 1 year. The bark beetle also carries a fungus known as blue stain or sap stain, which clogs the vascular tissues and further hastens the death of the tree. Like most living organisms, trees have natural defense mechanisms, and one of these is pitch. When the trees sense this threat, they use their pitch to push the beetles out. But if the tree is too stressed, it cannot produce enough pitch and will eventually be overcome by the beetles. To make matters worse, a highly stressed tree will emit increased volatiles. These are chemicals that attract bark beetles. Furthermore, the bark beetle will release pheromones, sending a signal to other nearby bark beetles, attracting mates and more beetles to overcome the tree's defenses. At this point, the tree doesn't stand a chance. Bark beetles are known to attack a wide variety of tree species, but those with thin, soft bark, such as the grand fir that are being attacked on our property, are most vulnerable. This tree exhibits crown discoloration, an easily recognizable and indicative sign of a bark beetle attack. Once this symptom reveals itself, nothing can be done to save this particular tree. And if not addressed soon, the bark beetle outbreak will move on to other nearby trees. Some of the research that I've found points to climate change as the cause of increasing bark beetle outbreaks. But other research reveals that it's more of a forestry management issue. As new forest owners, we're feeling motivated and empowered to take on the management of our forest and do what's best for our trees and our land. And as our forester pointed out, that means safely mimicking what a forest has been doing on its own before humans began to intervene. Absent of human intervention, naturally occurring forest fires were present in any given forest every 35 to 40 years. And the most dominant species, such as ponderosa pine, Douglas fir, western white pine, and western larch found in our forest, have adapted to frequent low-intensity surface fires by armoring themselves with thick bark. So not only would these trees survive forest fire, but they would actually be replenished and thrive for decades to follow, because the fire naturally thinned the forest, reducing and eliminating the less dominant trees that competed against them for water, sunlight, and nutrients in the soil. But as increasing numbers of people moved into the wildland-urban interface, the demand for wildland firefighting also increased in an effort to protect people's homes and businesses. Additionally, federal policy changed drastically in the 90s, reducing forestry management by over 90%. All of these factors have resulted in a lack of naturally occurring fire cycles, a massive buildup of combustible materials on the forest floor, and a stifling overpopulation of trees. This overcrowding is literally stressing out our forest, causing neighboring trees to ruthlessly compete against one another for their basic needs to survive: water, sunlight, and nutrients, which in itself has led to significant increases of diseases and pests, such as the bark beetle. So now that we know what is killing our trees, and more importantly, why, we're better equipped to implement the solution. What we won't be doing is recreating a natural forest fire through a prescribed burn. We'll leave that to the professionals as the Bureau of Land Management reintroduces fire to public lands.
Our objective is trying to reintroduce fire back onto this landscape and get all the benefits that natural fire has in this ecosystem. When it recovers from that, we're in a better situation where the ground fuels will be more continuous. If we have a healthy natural system and then we let fire play its natural role, we don't have all those costs after the fire in regards to the restoration and all that stuff, because the system was healthy to begin with.
But what we will do is what all landowners can and should do, which is basic forestry land management on a small and private scale. This focuses on thinning and pruning by removing unhealthy trees and the majority of grand fir and lodgepole, and pruning the Douglas fir, ponderosa pine, western larch, also known as tamarack, and the western white pine. Thinning and pruning is the next best thing to a forest fire in terms of managing a forest, because it reduces the competition amongst trees and reduces the overall stress of the forest as a whole. This results in an increased availability of light, water, nutrients, space, and dioxygen. And that is the preventative formula for reducing pests, diseases, and catastrophic forest fires. Now that we have a better understanding of what our forest needs to thrive, we're committed to taking action. But with a 20-acre forest, it feels a bit overwhelming. So our plan begins by simply accepting the fact that this job is just too big for us to complete in a short amount of time. Realistically, it's a never-ending job that we'll need to tend to regularly. We'll begin by focusing on the areas surrounding our existing infrastructure and future build site, and then we'll expand our attention outward to our backyard forest. We learned from our forester that funding is available for forest landowners such as ourselves through the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, known as EQIP, a USDA grant program that provides money to landowners who implement conservation and sustainability practices. Eligible landowners can receive up to 50% reimbursement for expenses incurred through the process of forest conservation and stewardship, such as the cost of equipment used for thinning. In order to benefit from this program, we'll first need to apply for the Idaho Forest Stewardship Program, a prerequisite for EQIP. If you're not in the state of Idaho or interested in other grant programs available to farmers and forest owners, visit the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service and see what's available for you. Our adventure of living in a forest is just beginning, and clearly, we have a lot of work ahead of us. But we moved here to build a better life for our family and enjoy the precious childhood years of our children. So our goals of nurturing our forest and building our homestead will require a healthy balance of work and play. And we know this won't always be possible, so we'll strive to enjoy the beauty and simplicity in the everyday moments in between the overwhelming challenges and the major accomplishments.